Good day, grade 11 learners. Welcome to the Life Sciences lesson. My name is Shabnam Sukhnendan, and this lesson is brought to you by the Sci-Bono Discovery Center in collaboration with the Gauteng Department of Education. So learners, today we're going to start and focus on a very important topic called human impact on the environment. And our focus or topic that goes under this big subsection is called the climate change and the greenhouse effect. Okay, so let us look at it. First of all, learners, we need to understand that the earth is our bigger home, right? It's our environment, that although we have a small home, but our earth is our bigger home. It's our planet on which our home is built. And humans are having a big negative effect on it. So we do need the environment for our survival, okay? And therefore we need to protect it. But how are humans actually impacting on our environment or planet Earth? They are impacting on it in a very negative manner. And by you knowing all the facts, hopefully you will learn these facts and understand how can we use methods to improve our ways of using our environment, our ecosystems, and actually conserving all the animal and plant and fauna and flora life, and actually conserving our planet for the future. So humans depend on the environment for survival. Remember, our activities are causing severe problems in our natural environment, and we're going to look at some of the activities that are actually impacting negatively. We produce more waste than our ecosystems can actually hold. Remember that our Earth is just one limited size, but the population is growing, and the more the population, the greater demand there is on our planet Earth. So we're producing more waste than our ecosystem can cope. That means that the carrying capacity of our planet and our ecosystem has actually reached its limit, and now it's going beyond the carrying capacity. Our environmental equilibrium is disturbed. That means now we are going beyond stability because there are more and more humans that are being populating the earth. So therefore, the quality of life on earth is going to be threatened because the demand is going to be more than the supply. Right, and you can have a look here, learners. You do see the landfill sites maybe in your area, and you can see all the waste that is being dumped by the pick it up, right, onto a landfill site, and you can see that we are producing more waste on the earth than what the earth can actually hold. If you look at all the supermarkets and all the plastic containers, that's a lot of waste that humans are going to produce once those resources are used. Here also you can see a lot of waste that is being dumped near the sea. Right. Now, what is climate and what is climate change? There is a very big difference, learners, of the two terminologies of climate and climate change. Remember, climate refers to a specific weather pattern in a very broad area over a period of time. So you have the same weather patterns over a period of time. For example, if you have to go, let's say, to India, maybe in September, you know it's going to be a monsoon season. It's always raining in that season at that time. So that's the climate of that area. So it's the weather pattern in a specific broad area over a long period of time. Then that becomes known as the climate of that area. Now, what is climate change is when there is a disturbance, a sudden disturbance or a change over several years, right? So if you look at it now, what was the weather before and now in the past few, maybe decades, the weather is changed. So if you had to go to, for example, India 10 years ago, and you know there were monsoon rains in September. Now, after maybe 10 years or 20 years you go, you see there's no rains for a few years now. It means now there's a disturbance in that weather pattern over a few years. So that is now called climate change. Right. Now, what happens or what contributes to our climate change is actually the greenhouse gases, and you can have abbreviation, capital GHGS means greenhouse gases. And these greenhouse gases, what do? They actually trap carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide actually traps the ultraviolet rays of the sun, heating the Earth's atmosphere, heating the Earth itself, causing global warming. So greenhouse gases is a terminology that you need to know, that these are gases which trap heat in the atmosphere. And the two main greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide and methane. So the two most important, or not important, but the two gases that contribute to global warming and to the greenhouse effect, whereby heat is trapped within the Earth's atmosphere. The two gases are called methane and carbon dioxide. Now, what is the word emission? Emission means those sources that release carbon dioxide and methane. And we're going to look at all the sources that release these greenhouse gases. So releasing of the gases which are harmful to the environment. So the releasing of the gases to the environment is called emission. So for example, carbon monoxide emission from vehicles. So it means releasing or giving off. Now let us look at the atmosphere itself, that our Earth is surrounded by an atmosphere, right, which is very important, like a protective layer, like a membrane around the Earth, which is called the atmosphere. And that atmosphere, which forms part of air and water vapor, is very important to sustain life on Earth. Now, what is that atmosphere actually made up of? It's made up of nitrogen. It's made up of oxygen, 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. Now, if you calculate that, it gives you 99%, and the other 1% is the remaining gases, which can be a small amount of 0.04% carbon dioxide and some other trace amounts like water vapor as well, which is very important because the water vapor also contributes to cloud formation. So that nitrogen gas and that oxygen that we are so dependent on for life, that forms your 99% of your atmosphere, and the other little trace gases are called like carbon dioxide and water vapor. So here's a little pie chart to show you that our atmosphere is made up of 78% nitrogen and our 21% oxygen. And nitrogen is an inert gas. It can only be activated by certain organisms in the soil, like your nitrogen-fixing bacteria. So although we may inhale it, it won't have any effect, because whatever we inhale, it will be exhaled again, because nitrogen is not going to be used by the lungs when you inhale it. Okay, nitrogen will only be used in the body to make proteins when you ingest nitrogen in the form of proteins like your amino acids, like your meat, chicken, eggs. That's where you get your nitrogen from. But getting it from the air will not help to make amino acids in your body. So you also have carbon dioxide, and this is a trace gas, and the trace gas is made up of most amount of carbon dioxide. And then you get small other gases there like methane, helium, and neon. So these are the trace gases, which is 1%. And then this is your main gases, which is 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. Right, let us look at the sources of carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. Now, carbon dioxide is produced by respiration. Remember, all our cells have a mitochondria, which actually uses glucose and oxygen, which you learnt of earlier in the year. And the mitochondria uses that for respiration and to produce our energy. In other words, due to respiration, although we are breaking down glucose with oxygen, we are releasing carbon dioxide into the air. It's fine if there's a few humans, but now all living organisms, all animals are actually releasing the CO2. And because the population is increasing, there's going to be a higher than normal amount of CO2 in the air. And when it's higher than normal, it's going to cause an enhanced greenhouse effect. All right, so carbon dioxide is released by respiration, also by decomposition. All the animals and plants that die, they also release CO2 in the air. Also, when you're burning coals, you're burning wood, it also releases CO2 in the air, right? And also when you are actually production of fertilizers, right? Even fertilizers, they also release carbon dioxide, and burning of felt fires releases a lot of carbon dioxide. Wood burning for your braais, they also release carbon dioxide. And when forests catch on fire, a lot of carbon dioxide is being released. And what do the fires do? They consume the very, very valuable oxygen that we need. So we need to reduce the burning of forests, and we need to reduce the burning of fells. Right, now we're going to look at the other main greenhouse gas, which is called methane, and the formula is CH4, right? Now, methane is the second largest contributor of greenhouse gases, and it causes an enhanced greenhouse effect. Greenhouse effect, what does that mean, children? Do you remember? It simply, what is a greenhouse? First of all, a greenhouse is where you normally keep plants. It has a plastic dome. You put plants in there, and then the light of the sun comes through the plastic because it's transparent, and then the heat doesn't escape through the plastic. The heat remains within that little dome-shaped house, a plastic house. So because now you're planting trees and plants there, which don't normally grow in the winter seasons, so all the green plants, right, and all the heat is trapped within it, for the plants to grow when it's very cold. So in winter, you can still get roses, you can still get spinach, because they planted in a greenhouse, because the sun's energy is trapped and warmed. Okay, so now our earth, what's going to happen is that we do need a little bit of methane and a little bit of carbon dioxide. So some heat is trapped within the earth. Otherwise, we'll be feeling very, very cold. It'll be like an ice age. So we do need a little bit of these greenhouse gases. But when we have more than normal, above the normal, that when it becomes enhanced. And this enhanced greenhouse effect means more heat is going to be trapped within the Earth's atmosphere, and is going to increase the temperature within the Earth's atmosphere, and that's going to cause global warming and the melting of the polar caps. Okay, so methane is the second largest contributor of greenhouse gases, and humans are responsible for over 60% of the total methane. Now, that's a lot of methane. We're supposed to have a small amount, but now too much of methane is being produced into the atmosphere. And that's because of all the human activities here. And you can see there's permafrost that's melting, the cattle, the cow dung actually releases methane, right? Even the burning of certain plants release methane. Your landfill sites are releasing methane. The decomposition of animals on the earth is also releasing methane. So all this methane is increasing within the earth's atmosphere, right? So now also you find in wetlands where you have like a river, and you have those reeds, right? So throughout the year, the reeds and the river must be there for what? Because plants and the animals like birds and cattle cannot go and open a tap and drink water, go to the shop to buy water. So naturally on earth, there's a wetland for them to drink water throughout the year. But humans are polluting the wetlands. Okay, but what's happening is that when there are animals that are decomposing in the, like fish that's decomposing in the wetlands, they also release methane. Also, certain areas of the polar caps, they also release methane, and that methane can be trapped right beneath the ice. So maybe there's some dead animals beneath the ice, then they're going to release the methane. And when the ice melts, all the methane bubbles will evaporate into the air. And you can see how the methane bubbles are evaporating or moving right at the bottom of the seabed, right? And even when the ice melts, the methane is trapped there from the dead animals below the ice. Also now, mining also contributes to the impacts negatively on the environment, because now they are actually going deeper into the ground to get crude oil, to get coal, to get gases. So they go right below the aquifer, which is the water, the actual solid rock that holds water, where you get borehole water. So what the scientists are doing, they're going beyond that aquifer and digging right beneath it to look for gas as a fossil fuel to fuel, for example, all your cars. And that is actually damaging the earth. Right, and you can see here now how this drilling rig is going right below, it's digging right through the fertile lawn, soil, digging through the bed of rock, right down to actually get this gas-rich layer. And by doing this drilling, it's actually affecting the environment negatively, right? It is impacting it negatively on the earth. So you can see here, people are actually protesting to say there are fossil fuels. We do not need to damage our earth to get to the gas. Right. If you look at the seawater, also the sea is polluted. A lot of all the papers and plastics, and people are dumping a lot of waste into our rivers, which end up into the sea. And all these dead plant animals are also killing our fish in the sea, and they're releasing methane, and it's going to increase the temperature of the sea water as well. So the ocean temperature rises as more methane is being released. So over the years, you can see from 1880 to 2020, you can actually see that the ocean's temperature is increasing. And what effect does that have? It means that certain fish which preferred cold water for survival, now they're going to die because the temperature is increasing. So their enzymes will not function, and because the temperature is increasing, and many fish will just die and float on the water, which leads to extinction. And remember, people depend on fish for their living, for their survival. So now you are also affecting food security. Also the people's job, the fisheries, the people who farm fish, there's going to be less fish in the oceans because the temperatures are increasing, because more waste is being dumped. So we are impacting negatively, and you can see this ship here, how it's cracking through the ice, and as it does that, it also kills a lot of fish. And when they die, they will release methane. Intensive agriculture means that most of farms actually have a lot of cattle, and then that cattle or dung will decompose and they will release methane. They use the dung for fertilizers, acts as a good fertilizer for plants to grow. Also your ruminants, which is your cows that chew the grass, they have two stomachs, right? And they also produce cow dung. So all this cattle here are actually called ruminants. They feed on plant material, and also the cow dung that they drop, all the droppings, also release methane, but not as much methane as humans are releasing. There's more humans on Earth that are actually releasing methane because of your fracking of the earth to get to gas. Also, all the decomposition of the dead animals, right? Killing of animals, killing of the plants, all that releases methane. Here you can see again cattle, and their dropping will release methane. Then you have your landfill sites here. That's where a lot of methane is being released. Now, learners, you can use this methane instead of it being released into the atmosphere. You can actually take some kind of like a tire and make like little like tubes and then collect this methane gas because it's flammable. Methane is flammable. And you can produce electricity from the methane landfill sites where now, instead of it going into the atmosphere to cause enhanced greenhouse effect and climate change, you can use it for using it as a fossil fuel for cooking. So that you are using the methane, instead of it being released, you are taking the methane and recycling it in a way whereby you can use it for cooking. And it wouldn't be harmful to the environment, so that you do not need to go and dig for more coal and to dig for more gas beneath the aquifers. So in this way, you can actually conserve our earth. Here you can see these are the sewage farms, and these sewage farms also release methane, which is a very, very harmful greenhouse gas. Right, other potent greenhouse gases, you find that the planet naturally has a lot of carbon dioxide due to the decomposition, right? Nitrous oxide also is part of the greenhouse gas. Then you have your ozone layer, which forms part of the ozone layer above the atmosphere protects or prevents the ultraviolet light from being harmful once it reaches the Earth's atmosphere. So the ozone actually protects the Earth, right? It protects the Earth. And therefore, you have like CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, which are released by the air conditioners, refrigerators, certain aerosols. They release these CFCs, which goes and destroys our ozone. Remember, our ozone layer actually makes the ultraviolet light of the sun harmless. So ultraviolet light is very, very hot. So if we destroy our ozone layer, the very hot ultraviolet light can come through the atmosphere in its harmful form and even cause skin cancer. But what prevents us all from getting that is because the ozone is protecting us. But now, by releasing nitrous oxide and CFCs, these are gas pollutants. They are going to destroy the ozone, which is protecting the life on Earth. Right. So nitrous oxide is released by the burning of wood and fossil fuels, like certain petrols, right? The breakdown of certain waste in the soil releases nitrous oxide, and it's coming from nitrogen. So all your nitrates, you have your nitrates and your sulfates. This forms part of the fertilizers. So when the farmers use those nitrates and sulfates, eventually when they react with the oxygen in the air, they'll form nitrous oxide, which actually destroys our ozone layer. So ozone is a molecule that consists of 3 atoms of oxygen. And these atoms are bounded together, right? But what does ozone do? Ozone actually protects the Earth from the harmful ultraviolet light. But it depends. You cannot inhale ozone. So lots of people do ozone therapy, but you cannot inhale ozone because then it becomes harmful. So ozone can be harmful, or it can be an advantage or a disadvantage. It just depends. When it's above the Earth's atmosphere, that's where it's protecting the Earth from the ultraviolet light of the sun. But you cannot inhale ozone. Right, so it can be harmful depending on where it occurs in the atmosphere. We can't have ozone below the atmosphere. Okay, so the ozone produced by vehicle emissions that accumulates close to the Earth becomes a pollutant. So only the ozone that nears the Earth and the ozone that is around the Earth that prevents the ultraviolet light, when it comes through, the ozone makes it harmless. Then it's an advantage, it's harmless. But when the ozone is now within the Earth's atmosphere, like here, then that's when it becomes harmful, and it will be regarded as a pollutant and a greenhouse gas. So ozone in the upper atmosphere protects life on Earth by absorbing 99% of our sun's ultraviolet radiation. So that's where the ozone is useful, above the Earth's atmosphere. And here is the structural diagram of an ozone made up of 3 oxygen atoms, and our chlorofluorocarbons, they destroy this ozone, and then you can have an ozone depletion where it's above Antarctica, from space, you can see this ozone having a hole and the ultraviolet light going through it and melting the polar caps. And what's causing the ozone to be depleted? It's our greenhouse gases like nitrous oxide, too much carbon dioxide, too much of methane, and also chlorofluorocarbons. So the CFCs, the nitrous oxide, okay, the carbon dioxide, and the methane, which is your CH4, all these contribute to destroying our ozone. Right. So CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, are found in the aerosol sprays, right, in certain solvents, like, for example, your turpentines, right? They are certain to actually, when you are doing the paints, and your fridges and foams for food packaging, like your polystyrene also, they have certain amounts of CFCs in it. Right. They are harmful to the ozone layer in the Earth's atmosphere because the chlorine atoms are released on exposure to ultraviolet radiation. So in other words, if the ozone is found below the Earth's atmosphere, then it's very, very harmful because it will allow the ultraviolet light to come through, and it's going to be very hot, and that can cause cancer. So here is the sources, a little diagram to show you the sources of chlorofluorocarbons, and you can see it's coming from the smoke by the burning of fossil fuels, from your refrigerators, from your air cons, and your aerosol sprays, and even in some paints as well. Right, so ozone depletion means now there's going to be a hole in the ozone layer above the Earth, And in 1970, there was a hole that was discovered in the ozone layer above the South Pole, right? The ozone was thinning and even disappearing at times over the polar regions, and that allowed the harmful UV light to come through the atmosphere, and scientists refer to this ozone hole as ozone depletion. And you can see here in the southern part of the southern hemisphere, in the south, right at the North Pole and South Pole, here they could see from space, here is a hole in the ozone. That protective membrane, that ozone layer within the atmosphere had a hole. And what was destroying it was the carbon, the chlorofluorocarbons and nitrous oxide and carbon dioxide and methane. Okay. So here is your South Pole, and here you can see the weakened area of your ozone layer. And that allowed ultraviolet light to come through and cause a lot of cancer. So what is the effect of the ozone depletion? Because it's thinning or destroyed, more UV light reaches the Earth's surface, causing increased UV exposure weakens our immune system. So more and more people get sick. The immunity drops. It also causes cataract, right, and damages chromosomes. And when it damages chromosomes, what happens? It results in cancer, right? And then you can see here, this is actually an example of skin cancer developing on skin, on the human skin. So severe exposure to ultraviolet rays of the sun. That is why now they actually have like a little screen to tell you that, look, the ultraviolet light, or like a little sensor to tell you what is the UV radiation for the day. And especially when people go to the beachfront in December, they will tell you what's the UV radiation for the day. So people must wear sunscreens, wear a hat, put on a sunscreen creams, so that that UV light that is coming through will not burn the skin and cause skin cancer. So you have ozone depletion also causes crops to die. So UV radiation interferes with photosynthesis in plant growth. Now this very hot light is coming through. So the plants also need a certain temperature to photosynthesize. So if the temperature is going to increase because of the ozone depletion, it will affect photosynthesis, and then you're going to find that we will not get enough food crops. The plants are not growing well. There's very little fruit. There's very little flowers. And all that now is going to result in a loss of biodiversity and also affect food security. So food security is threatened because everything depends on the plant. If you look at milk, we don't just get milk like that. You get it from the cow, but for the cow to produce milk, it must eat a plant. If you're looking at your fruits and your vegetables, it must come from a plant, and for the plant to give you that fruit, it must photosynthesize. But if the UV light is there, damaging, increasing the temperature, photosynthesis drops, then those food crops cannot produce your mealies, your apples, your bananas, your watermelons, and then obviously now your food security is going to be affected because plant growth slows down drastically. Also, the UV light is going to increase the temperature of the oceans, and also most of the fish will die. Material damage, for example, too much of UV light because of the ozone depletion, it will break down wood. So you find that even people's homes or wood, even the trees, the actual tree trunks can be damaged by that excessive UV light. Also, plastics can be destroyed, rubber, textiles, all construction. So even your homes can be destroyed because of the UV light that is coming through. Okay, there'll be more rusting, your metals will decompose faster. You find even your wood will start rotting even more in the timber that is found in the homes. So it affects everyone's lifestyle as well. Enhanced greenhouse effect means that we do need a certain amount of CO2 and nitrous oxide in the air, but we do not need more than normal. When it's more than normal, it's going to cause an enhanced greenhouse effect. More heat is going to be trapped. So the enhanced greenhouse effect is referred to as a climate change because now there's more heat in the atmosphere. It's going to cause what? More evaporation from the seas, and it can cause more cloud formation. So some places will have more rain. And then the places where it's very dry, it's going to become even more dry, even drier. So now all the water of the earth, of that part of the place, will dry up, and then you're going to get severe droughts as well. Cattle will die, plants will die, because now it's becoming too hot and all the water from that earth's surface has evaporated, making it so dry that you can't even get cloud formation. And without clouds, there won't be rain. So you're going to have severe weather conditions, either too much of rainfall causing floods, or no or little rainfall causing a drought. And either way, it will cause what? Crops and animals, and even affect human life. All right. So the increased amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that humans have released into the Earth's atmosphere, and we've seen by all the activities, right, is part of this industrial revolution, because now people want to become more advanced. They no more want to walk to the shops. They want to drive to the shop. They want to have more transport, more factories, create more jobs. People don't want to just wear skins. They want to have clothes. So for clothes, you need more textile factories, more dyes, more plants have to be removed. And that is how we are affecting our environment. You can see here's our little planet. It's not increasing in size, but the human population here is increasing. And what are we doing? We are removing the valuable forests. And what do forests do? Forests act as carbon dioxide sink. Carbon sinks. They absorb our CO2. Forests are trees. They absorb our CO2 for photosynthesis. But now because we're getting rid of more trees, the carbon dioxide is increasing in the atmosphere. And what does carbon dioxide do? It traps the UV light. So here's the sun, and here's the sun's radiation, and it's coming through. And remember, now there's a hole in the ozone layer, and it's coming through, and it's actually increasing the Earth's temperature. Right. So now also, this CO2 acts like a blanket, children. So when the CO2 is accumulating, so here's your Earth, that's the atmosphere, right? That's the ozone layer. So when the light of the sun comes through, the ozone layer makes it harmless, the UV light. It goes to the atmosphere, then it comes onto the Earth's surface. So now, when the Earth is going to release more CO2, what's going to happen is that now when the Earth is releasing more, this CO2 is going to accumulate below the atmosphere. And it acts like a blanket. It traps the heat. So the CO2, the nitrous oxide, the methane, they trap the heat like the greenhouse. They trap the heat. Heat can't escape because now it's like a blanket of CO2. So when the sun rays come through the Earth's atmosphere onto Earth, then when it wants to reflect back into space, it can't because the CO2 is acting as a barrier. It's trapping the heat of the sun within the Earth's atmosphere, and that is what's causing climate changes, okay? Increasing the Earth's temperature, causing severe floods and severe droughts, and also killing lots of plants because they can't photosynthesize, affecting biodiversity, affecting food security. Okay, and you can see here all the solar radiation here, and you can see now here, normally what's going to happen if the light of the sun comes through, it must reflect into space. But now the light of the sun is coming through, but it's now being trapped by this blanket of CO2. Yeah, right. So this is all the parts that is causing actual greenhouse effects. For example, or changes in the weather patterns. You can see here now the road is closed because of flooding. You can see that there's very reduced plants, crops here because the temperature is increasing. The light of the sun, the UV light is coming through the Earth's atmosphere, causing skin damage. Look at the forests are burning. Humans are just burning the forests, right? Releasing CO2 into the air. And then the polar caps, can you see they are melting? And that's going to cause flooding because remember, what is trapped in the ice? It's fresh water. And now once that ice falls into the sea, the fresh water is lost because now how it's going to dissolve into the sea, which has salt. Okay, so that is the effect of what humans are doing to our environment. Can you see there's a thermometer that indicates that the Earth's atmosphere or the temperature within the Earth's atmosphere is increasing. And why? Because of the greenhouse gases. So sharply rising temperatures resulting in increasing numbers of heat waves, alternating with extreme weather conditions such as powerful storms. So the more our temperature rises with the Earth, it can cause powerful storms or extreme droughts. Coastal floodings, and then when it floods, you can see that some cities will actually go underwater because now even the seawater will rise and come onto the land and actually cover all the land. So in some parts of Fiji, it's already submerged underwater because of the sea levels rising. You can see now the sea level is coming very, very, very close to the coast because the sea level is rising. Why? Because of the polar caps melting. And why is the polar caps melting? Because of increased temperature. And why is the increased temperature coming about? Because of the increased CO2 that is acting as a blanket and trapping our heat of the sun, right? So here you can see now, learners, how the sea is on this side and the sea will flood, go over all the forests and over all the homes. And once the sea water actually goes through the trees, the salt water is going to kill those trees. And all the animal life, the birds and their nests that live on there, and also the fish and the whales will come ashore and they will also die. So it can only cause a negative impact, right? So that is what's global warming doing. So Pacific Ocean islands are disappearing because of the rising sea levels due to the melting of the polar caps. You can see here, right, in Venice, normally people actually have to use these gondolas, like little boats, right? And that's their mode of transport. So they don't have roads where you have people to go with the bicycles and carts and buses. They move with boats. So Venice is a city which has which has water. So people have to move through the water. So the sea levels are rising. So the tide is rising and so are we. So they have to rise, they have to walk above that sea level to get to their places of work and homes. Here you can see how Venice actually is now a city floating on water. Pakistan has 7,000 glaciers that are melting. So in Pakistan, there is a city it's a country near the mountains where there's snow, and that snow is melting and also causing a lot of flooding around the homes. Right. You can see this is a picture taken from an aeroplane, and if you've maybe 80 years ago, if they had to fly with the airplane, everything was green because there was lots of rainfall, the climate was not affected, there were fewer people, fewer factories, fewer textiles, less garbage or less waste produced. People used not to have fancy takeaways and boxes and polystyrenes, so there was less waste. Less waste means less decomposition. Less decomposition means less CO2 produced. So the ozone was very protected, and therefore when it's supposed to rain, it was raining, and where it's supposed to flood, it was flooding, but not damaging. And you find there was plenty trees because photosynthesis was taking place at its optimum rate. Now all the trees, all the forests have been removed for human use, for building, for timber, for building, for furniture, right? They're removing all the trees. How are you going to build furniture? So all the trees have been removed by deforestation. Now you can just see barren land, okay? And that's going to cause soil erosion. All the fertile soil that you need to plant crops will be washed into the sea. And once it's washed, you cannot get it back. So if you want to plant food crops like mealies, you can't get it back. So trees act as windbreakers, and they also prevent soil erosion. but now we are reducing our forests. We're reducing the trees and we're increasing the amount of CO2 in the air. Look at this in Australia in 2019. The forest was a home to a vast variety of biodiversity, plenty different kinds of plants and animals that we use to make medicines. All the different types of animals and bird life has been destroyed by this bushfire. And how was it caused? One human took a cigarette and threw it into the bush, and that is what it caused. One human to destroy millions and millions of biodiversity. Okay, so this is not good, children. Okay, we need to prevent our fell fires and save our planet and also save ourselves. You can see here, just like locally in Krugersdorp in 2016, there was flash floods. Okay, and rainfall patterns are changing because dry areas are getting volumes of rain. In Gauteng, we are getting flash floods. So maybe some places there's rain and some places there's no rain. So this is a change in the climate because of the pollution. So where there's less trees, there's less rain. And you need rain because without rain, you can't wash your clothes. And you think, why? I'm not washing my clothes in the rain. But the rain is needed to fill the dams, and the dams need water to fill your taps. And you need the tap to open to drink water, to water your plants, right, and to wash your clothes. So eventually all your cold drinks and your clothes is washed by rainwater. So we do need rain, and the rain depends on your plants. We cannot remove the forest because they also release water vapor. And if we remove the forest, we're increasing CO2. If we increase CO2, what we're doing? We are creating a blanket to trap the heat, and then that's going to cause what? Either droughts or flash floods. Right. You can see here the N1 highway. People are busy taking photographs because suddenly there's a disturbance in the weather pattern. Too much of rain. So we need not too much, not too little, but just the right amount so that all plant life and animal life can benefit. You can see here now, there's not enough rain, there's not enough plants to release water vapor to form clouds because there's not enough plants, because they also release water vapor via transpiration. Remember transpiration? Yes, if you go to a place where there's a forest, a lot of trees, early in the morning, you'll see like gases moving out of the trees. It looks so beautiful, like small clouds. That's natural water vapor that's going to form a cloud and keep the air very, very moist and keep your skin looking great. Okay, children, but when we see plants like this dying, you need mealies to make mealie meal. So much of things we need for that depends on maize. Now, when you see your crops dying like this because of a drought, it's all because our Earth's atmosphere is increasing and that these maize plants now cannot photosynthesize when the temperatures are too high in the Earth. So food production is decreasing, crops die, and they cannot adapt to the changing seasons, becoming very, very hot. So if you remember, maybe if you are maybe 40 years, then remember 30 years ago, the summers were not as hot, but now the summers are extremely hot. You can't even take a walk because now that sudden disturbance in the weather pattern is called climate change. And do not blame the weather. We blame the humans which are impacting on the weather because of the pollutants we are releasing. So desertification means now, when the person was flying on the aeroplane, you could see more brown, more sand, less greenery. And that means our earth is becoming more of a desert than a forest. So millions of years ago, there were more forests. That's when the dinosaurs lived and a lot of plants, animals, and natural medicine. There's few people and lots of forests. But over time, as human population is increasing, our demand on the forests and trees are increasing, and therefore more forests are being removed, nothing to trap the soil. And when it does rain and it's very, very windy, all the topsoil is blown or washed away into the sea. And what does that do? The sand or soil will clog the gills of the fish, which is used for breathing, and the fish die. fertilizers will wash into the sea and the fish die. Everything else will decompose, and then what's released? Methane. Okay, so 90% of South Africa is regarded to be a desert or semi-desert, meaning there is less trees. What is the meaning of D? D always has a disadvantage. D. Deforestation, removal of forests, disadvantage, something bad. Okay, so deforestation means where you are removing forests, and it's happening at a very large scale. Okay, large scale of indigenous. What is that word indigenous? It means large forests that is found in our country is being removed by humans. So now people actually advertise, I'm a tree feller. Feller means I can cut down the trees. And now by doing that, you are killing, although you might think that the tree is not living, that tree is very much alive, and it's keeping you alive, keeping us alive by supplying us with food, with shade, with shelter for the birds, right? Shade for the humans, shelter. You go and seek, when it's very hot, you go under the tree, shade of the tree. Now if you're going to remove all the trees, where are you going to get shade? Where must the birds build their nests? If they build it in your homes, on the roof, you're going to kill the birds. So where must they stay? Because they also need a home. So their home's supposed to be the forest. So now when we're burning the trees and we're killing and we're felling the trees, cutting the trees, and we're clearing the bush to make more place for homes and factories and schools, then we are actually removing the forest, and we're contributing to what? The total amount of greenhouse gases. Because by removing forests and trees, we are decreasing the trees, decreasing photosynthesis. And what are we doing? We are increasing carbon dioxide, which is the main greenhouse gas. Okay, can you see here how so many forests are being destroyed? And you know, in one go, it'll take 5 minutes for you to fell or cut a tree that is 30 years old. 5 minutes to cut down trees that are 30 years old. But now for you to grow one tree, it's going to take another 30 years for it to grow to that height. And in that 30 years, another 1 million trees are cut down. So the rate of deforestation is far higher than what we can replenish or replace. So always think before you cut down a tree, okay? Why do we need forests? We need it for these. Mainly, it forms part of our food source. Okay? It's part of our food source. So forests play a vital role in securing a stable and adequate food supply. That means our apples, the farmers depend on the trees, right? Because you go to fruit and veg, you have your pumpkins, your apples, bananas. Where do they come? They're coming from the trees. But these trees need a certain temperature to produce food. Then, if we're removing the trees, we're cutting them down. Can you see how they cut them down? What is happening? We are going to increase the amount of CO2 in the air. CO2 is a greenhouse gas. What is it going to do? It's going to trap more ultraviolet rays of the sun. It's going to increase the temperature within the Earth's surface, causing global warming. With increased temperatures or global warming means warming of the temperature throughout the Earth, right, within the atmosphere. It's going to result in decreased photosynthesis and crops will die, right? So deforestation means that if we remove the forest, there is nothing to absorb that CO2 that is released by humans. And if there's nothing that absorbs the CO2 will trap the heat of the ultraviolet rays, because forests act as carbon dioxide sinks. They absorb, like a sponge, they absorb the CO2 for photosynthesis. By removing it, CO2 is going to remain in the atmosphere. No one is there to absorb it. And then it's going to be a greenhouse gas. And because there's more CO2 than normal, an enhanced greenhouse effect means more heat is going to be trapped within the Earth's atmosphere. Heat from where? From the ultraviolet rays of the sun. Okay, it's going to be trapped because now it can't go back into space. Then we also need trees that act as windbreakers. So certain little animals and birds, they stay in these trees, but they cannot have an open space because they will lose their wings. Because now the winds are too strong. And those little insects or birds can lose their wings because the wind is too strong. But if you have trees, they act as windbreakers. The roots of the trees prevent soil erosion. So we need it for sustainable agriculture. We need soil to be fertile, to be composed on the earth, not run off into the sea. So we need that soil, right? So our trees prevent soil erosion, and sustainable agriculture means forests are protected against erosion, floods and drought, and they allow for, so every year now we know we got enough soil and we can always plant something else because the fertile soil is there. It's not blown away and it's not washed away by wind or water erosion. Why? Because our tree roots are holding that soil. Right. Then the entire life on our planet, all the insects and plants and fish in our oceans, all ecosystems, we depend on trees for our oxygen. We cannot survive without oxygen for 4 minutes. So forests play a home to half of all the life. In fact, all life on earth depends on our forests because they give us food and shelter, right? And they give us the most important thing, and that is oxygen. So oxygen and food, which no living organism can stay without, and therefore they support life on earth. Now, why are people removing forests at such an alarming rate? For land clearance. They need to clear the land. You can see how there's a human's hand here, how humans are actually coming and removing the trees, and that's a human going there now, and they're removing all the trees, right? They want to now plant food crops, and you'll say, no, it's fine if we remove the trees because we're still going to plant something. But you're planting cabbages and potatoes. They're not going to be there for a long time. You're just going to grow and then take them off again and again now. The soil is exposed to erosion. And remember, that's not providing a sustainable, because those plants are just there for a while. They photosynthesize for a while and they are out of the ground. Whereas the trees that were there for millions of years are actually habitat to many, many bird life. Okay, many of the birds. So to prevent extinction, we got to conserve the trees. But now, can you see how humans are snatching the forests because of building more factories, textiles? We need plants to form dyes for material. Okay, we also get rubber plants to make tires are also made from plants. Okay, so for land clearance, for farming, for urban development, commercial logging, that means you want to plant a whole lot of pine trees, and you want to plant pine trees for your timber. Then you're removing your commercial plantations for fast-growing trees for supplying timber and for making paper. So all your notes, that's why they say go paperless. You need to use your cell phones to read instead of giving you hard notes, because every single piece of paper is coming from a tree. So if we can use technology to read, like your PowerPoint presentation to learn instead of a book, we can learn from PowerPoint, from our TVs, from our cell phones. Then we do not have to print more and more notes. And if we don't print much notes, we're going to save on trees. Mining also. So here you have to remove the trees now, and they want to get to the gas beneath the earth acting as a fossil fuels for motor vehicles. Okay, because there's not enough crude oil. Now they are looking for alternative sources, and now they're digging deep, deep beneath the earth to look for more fuel. So they are going to mine for gases. And therefore, when you are mining, you're going to what? Burn large amounts of forest. So we also use it for fuel, whereby trees are cut down and you're going to use the wood to make a wood fire, to braai, you're going to have coal. Right, so all that are fossil fuels which you're going to be using for cooking, for domestic use, right, to produce electricity. Now, children, we also remove certain forests and we want to plant some traditional medicines. So you can see, for example, there's some plants like maybe a certain plant like an aloe or butchu, whatever you can call it, or the dandelion. All these little plants that act as traditional medicines. Now they remove the forest and they say, no, we need to plant these little shrubs because they act as traditional medicine. So natural forests are removed for commercial plantations to produce traditional medicines. So indigenous trees are stripped of their bark. Look at this tree. This bark is used as some form of a medicine. So once you remove the bark, remember now, this tree has phloem. Phloem is going to transport food from the leaves down to the roots for the tree to survive. If you're removing the bark, you're removing the phloem. So that if the roots don't, the leaves are on the top, they photosynthesize. They send food down the phloem. Phloem is in the bark. If you remove the bark, you're going to kill the tree. So eventually, you're depending on this tree you want the tree for its bark, but eventually you're going to kill the tree because the tree also needs food to survive. And the food is going down the phloem, and the phloem is in the bark. So it's a vicious cycle. You're going to want the bark of the tree, but the tree also wants the bark for its own survival. So eventually, we'll have no trees left, and you wouldn't even have the bark that was used as a traditional medicine. Can you see now, learners, here, if we remove more trees, you're going to get more carbon dioxide and it's going to react with water and it's going to form carbonic acid, and then you're going to get acid rain. And if there's acid rain, if you're walking with an umbrella, the acid rain will make holes in your umbrella. It's going to also make holes in the leaves of the trees. It's going to kill the trees. It's going to also make holes in the birds. It's going to also make the water of the rivers acidic and the fish are going to die. So because of the accumulation of CO2, we're going to get acid rain. We're going to get ozone depletion. We're going to warm our atmosphere. We're going to get droughts. We're going to kill the crops. So this is what we call human impact and how we are actually affecting the climate, and the climate is affecting life on Earth. So forest fires, whether it's deliberate, that means whether somebody deliberately lights a forest fire, or accidental means that maybe it's very hot and the forest caught on fire, that's natural, then lots of vegetation is going to be lost. And if that vegetation was food crops, you're going to find that food is going to become very, very expensive because there's not enough food because most of the crops were destroyed by the veld fires. Acid rain weakens trees by damaging their leaves. And if there's no leaves, that means no photosynthesis. The plants can't make food to send to the roots. And if the roots die, they can't absorb water. And eventually that whole little plant will die. So how does deforestation contribute to global warming? We call it the slash and burn technique that's used to clear the forest. And what the slash and burn technique used to clear forests release CO2. So remember, the minute you are cutting down the trees, already there's going to be an increase in CO2. And when you cut down the trees and then you burn them, there's going to be an even more CO2 accumulating because now you remove the trees that absorbs the CO2, and now you're also burning the tree, which means you are creating even more CO2. And that is causing the enhanced greenhouse effect. So destruction of living trees reduces the amount of photosynthesis. It will change the surface albedo, means how much of the sun's energy is reflected by the surface, and change the amount of water vapor released into the atmosphere. So veld fires actually decrease the water vapor because when you're burning something, it's so hot, all the water will evaporate from the clouds, no clouds will form, and then there's going to be no rain, and without rain, all the seeds will not germinate. And it causes what? Lots and lots of, it causes an economic loss, it causes a loss to the farmers because there's not enough food, there's not enough grass for the cows to eat, Milk will become expensive. Cheese and dairy products will become expensive. All because there's no rain. And there's no rain because there's no forest. And there's no forest because humans are cutting down the forest. So can you see, whatever we do, although it's for our benefit, it's also going to end up destroying us eventually. You can see what humans are doing here. They cut down the tree. So now even the nests of those little birds are being destroyed. That's habitat destruction. The trees are cut down. It means now they're going to burn the tree. So that's going to emit emissions. More carbon dioxide is emitted into the air, trapping the ultraviolet rays, increasing the temperature. When you're burning a fire, what's going to happen now? You're going to decrease water vapor, less clouds, less rain. So eventually, all this forest will disappear, and there's going to be now a desert. Where there was forest, it's going to become a desert. Can you see like that? So here the forests are removed. Look at this now. You cannot replace, that's like how many millions of hectares of forest, almost maybe over 20,000 trees are being removed that took about 20 years to grow. Now, if you're going to plant them, it's going to take another 40 years to grow because of climate change. Eventually, everything becomes a desert and our CO2 is increasing. And that is why, learners, if you complain about the weather, just remember that it's not the weather, it's the climate that's changed because of what? Human activities. Because of the increased amount of deforestation and wildfires. That's the main contributing factors to global warming and ozone depletion. All right. Look at now. They're cutting down the trees. Now they're having a paper factory. This paper factory is releasing CO2, nitrous oxide, and even methane into the atmosphere. So forests act as natural carbon dioxide sinks. They absorb CO2 during photosynthesis. They take in our CO2. And when they die, they will decompose. Or when they cut, they decompose. Then CO2 becomes part of the humus. Now, if forests are cut down and remains in then CO2 will remain in the atmosphere and cause global warming. The manufacturing of wood and paper produces even more CO2. And what does that cause? Global warming. And why? Because the CO2 is acting as a blanket. It is trapping the UV light within the Earth's atmosphere. Now you can see, if you are removing the forest, there's nothing to hold the soil. So if there is rain, then all that mud cannot be held. You will have a mudslide. And if there was a house there, the mud will slide with the house. Then it's called a landslide because you have removed forest. So there'll be soil degradation from nitrogen loss, exposure to wind and water erosion. The soil is degraded, not enough soil. Most of the soil is washed away. There's no trees. So more frequent flooding, mudslide, as reduced vegetation cannot absorb heavy rainfall. So the more trees you have, there'll be less flooding because the roots will absorb the water. There'll be less flooding. But if you don't have trees, then all that land will slide down and all the homes that were there will be washed into the rivers. So deforestation causes desertification, means there's more deserts now, there's more brown land and less greenery, and this causes the extinction of our bird species, our fish, right? It's estimated that 50,000 species are disappearing every year, annually, because of deforestation, right, and droughts. Look at what the humans are doing now. They are taking away the palm trees. They make palm oil for our chocolates. But all these animals depend on those palm kernels. You know, the palm kernels have a certain oils which the parrots use to make the colorful feathers. The little monkeys and the gorillas, they depend on that palm. So now they are taking away the palm forest. See, all the palm trees are there. rainforest palm oil to make palm oil for all our chocolates. So all the chocolates that you see, they're getting very expensive, whereby one chocolate of maybe 50 grams of, let's say, Toblerone is costing maybe 200 rands because they are using palm oil. And palm trees are becoming extinct, so the oil is becoming very scarce. So it's becoming very expensive. So chocolates before used to be 2 cents and 1 cent and 5 cents. Now one little chocolate is nothing less than 1 rand. You don't even get a 1 rand chocolate anyway. So children, all these forests are being destroyed here, and you can see now the animals are trying to follow this tree because it's looking for its food. All its food is going away to this factory here to produce palm oil. So once we plant palm trees, who's going to know the difference? So they're going to actually remove all this natural forest, and now they're going to try to plant palm trees. But now these palm trees are going to be planted for the kernels and oil, then they're going to be removed. So these poor animals will not have the natural vegetation, and they're also not going to have the palm kernels which they depended on naturally. Okay, so carbon footprint. The term carbon footprint refers to the total amount of carbon dioxide emitted by an individual in 1 year. So let's say, for example, you keep all your lights on during the day because you just like to put the light on, or you don't even forget to put the light off when you are leaving, and whole day it stays on. What you are actually contributing to the carbon footprint, and you'll say, but I just left my light on, I'm not contributing to carbon footprint. But remember, learner, for that light to stay on, Eskom has to burn a few tons of coal, which is a fossil fuel. And when that fossil fuel is burning, what is it being released into the air? It's going to be nitrous oxide, it's going to be a little bit methane, it's going to be carbon dioxide. So you're contributing to what? Global warming. You're contributing to the enhanced greenhouse effect. You're contributing to the increased CO2 in the air because also trees were removed. And therefore, carbon footprint means the total amount of carbon dioxide that an individual will release during his lifespan, okay, in 1 year. So we call it the carbon footprint because now if you plant more trees and you use less electricity and you say, I'm going to use methane from the landfill sites to generate electricity, I'm not going to use Eskom, I'm going to use solar panels where I'll use the natural radiation of the sun to heat up my geyser for my cooking. So that means you're not depending on wood to burn a fire, you're not depending on coal from Eskom to have electricity. Right? You are using naturally without causing destruction to the atmosphere and to the global, you're not causing global warming. Then you have a very green carbon footprint, a light carbon footprint. Can you see? But this one is using up a lot of electricity, cutting down a lot of trees, increasing the amount of CO2 in the air. So this one has a high carbon footprint and this one has a low carbon footprint because he's allowing more plants to survive and more CO2 be absorbed from the air. Okay, so reducing our carbon footprint is the most important long-term step we can take to ensure our future on this planet is sustained, it's conserved. There are many ways we can do it, so we need to reduce our carbon footprint. So by saying, let me switch off the lights, it's fine. I don't need to put the light on at 5. I can put it on at 8. There's still some amount of light. Or, for example, I don't need to actually, I can use just solar panels. It's costs a lot, but I will use solar panels so that Eskom burns a little less coal to produce less electricity because now I'm using solar panels, solar electricity. I don't need to put my stove on. I'm using solar panels. I don't need to put the geyser on from Eskom. I'm using solar panels. So it means a lot of coal is not going to be used. And what is coal? Coal is carbon. So it means you are producing less carbon dioxide. And that's how you can reduce your carbon footprint on Earth and save our planet. So let us look at some of the activities, learners. which one of the following combinations of gases are the main causes of global warming? Is it carbon dioxide and ozone? Is it chlorofluorocarbons and carbon dioxide? Is it methane and carbon dioxide? Or is it chlorofluorocarbons and methane? Remember, this one is released by your air conditioners. But the two main gases that contribute to the enhanced greenhouse effect is going to be methane and carbon dioxide. Okay, next one. Give the correct biological term for each of the following descriptions. Write down only the term next to the question number. Right. What's the total amount of carbon dioxide released to the atmosphere by an individual or community in a year? Right. Next question. Which layer in the atmosphere makes UV light harmless? Next one. What do we call the increase in temperature throughout the earth? So what will be the total amount of carbon dioxide released by an individual? It's called the carbon footprint. And this one, which layer makes UV light harmless in the atmosphere? Right? Or which one's going to make it harmless or not so hot? It's going to be the ozone. And the increase in temperature throughout the earth is called global warming. The next one, what's the difference between climate and climate change? We know climate refers to the average weather patterns in a broad area over time, whereas climate change refers to a disturbance or change in the weather pattern compared to present and compared it to previous years, or maybe over over decades and compared it to now. So the disturbance in the changes in weather patterns seen over a longer period of time, a disturbance or change, that's called climate change. Name 4 sources of methane gas, and you find that is the wetlands, right? It's your wetlands. That means all the waste that is decomposing, they release methane. The melting of the ice, there's dead animals beneath it, it will release methane. Also your termites, right? When they feed on dead trees, as the trees are decomposing, they'll release methane. Mining also release methane. Cattle, cow dung releases methane. All your landfill sites with all the litter from your dustbins, as they decompose, the cabbage leaves and all the dirt that you put in there, they will release methane. And also the sewage, right, that goes to the sewage farm, it releases methane. And then you can see now, let's read this paragraph. And it says over 18 millions of hectares have burned in the Australian bushfires, right? 20,000 to 19 to 2020, 5,900 buildings and over 2,000 homes were destroyed, right? The world's biodiversity is concentrated in forests, and then the forests are home to more than 80,000 or 80% of the terrestrial species of animals. When forest burns, biodiversity also gets destroyed and disappears, resulting in extinction. Right. So let's see, learners. Name one other way that can lead to loss of biodiversity. So besides burning, besides deforestation and burning, what else can reduce our biodiversity? It is when we are poaching. So when we are killing the rhinos for their horns and the elephants for their tusks, when you're killing these animals, it means that they will become extinct. You will no longer see them in real life. You'll only see them in a picture. So that is reducing. So that is poaching and alien invasions as well. When you cause other plants that come from another area into your area, then they will grow so fast, they will rob the plants of that area, your indigenous plants, of water, killing your indigenous plants. So you're going to reduce your biodiversity. So name 3 reasons why biodiversity is important for survival of humans. It gives us food. It gives us medicines. It forms part of our fossil fuels for energies. We need plants, we need wood to burn the fire for cooking, right? And it also gives us oxygen, isn't it? Let's look at the next one. The following table shows the estimated amount of solid waste. So here you can see from 2018 to 2021, the amount of solid waste is increasing from 1.49 million of tons. 2021, which is about 4 years old, 4 years ago, there's 1.93 million tons of waste. So from 2018 to 2021, in a period of 3 years, can you see the amount of waste is almost doubling? And therefore, what are the people doing? You find these people taking these huge little bags with the trolleys, like a long, big trolley bag, and they are taking all your plastics. They're trying to recycle it because you are producing more waste. So the amount of recyclable material in solid waste is also increasing because there's more people and more waste. So they're going to need more waste for recycling. So describe the general trend in the total amount of waste produced and the amount of recyclable materials dumped from 2018 to 2021. So since there's more waste being produced in the period of 3 years, there's going to be more, or there's going to also be an increased amount of recyclable material. Both the waste produced and recyclable material has increased. And you must say, from 2018 to 2021 in that period. Right. And then explain 2 advantages of why you need to recycle. Remember that 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle, okay? So let's just look at this again. People must collect, so what is the advantage of recycling? So that you do not need to actually go back and dig the earth for more coal, okay? Now you're going to recycle certain things. Coal cannot be recyclable, but at least you know that I don't have to go and dig to get more plastic from the earth. I can use my own plastic bottles and reuse it to make something else. So you're reducing the waste because you're going to reuse it. So when you reuse it, it means you're going to reduce the waste. If you recycle it, it means you're going to reduce the waste. And also, when you're collecting that waste, it's also creating jobs, because when you collect that waste from everyone's bin, that plastics, and you take it to the plastic factory, they're going to pay you something. So actually, you're also creating jobs and reducing poverty. So that is an advantage of recycling, and also preventing from polluting our environment. You can also recycle paper as well. So if you recycle paper and cardboard, it means now you don't have to cut down more trees. So you can conserve more trees. So how could people reduce their carbon footprint? We must refuse to waste. That means we must try, for example, at schools to bring our own containers to eat food, so we don't have to use plastic, polystyrene container. Polystyrene is one of the highest contributors to CFCs in the atmosphere because it's non-biodegradable, it doesn't break down, and it releases CFCs, which destroys our ozone. So we try to reduce other waste by using recyclable material, try to reduce felt fires, try to use less gas, you try to use less wood for burning, right? Reuse plastic bottles and mugs. Also, you try to use a paper bag, a shopping paper bag, instead of a plastic bag, because plastics cannot decompose, but paper can be recycled, plastic can be recycled as well, but paper can also decompose and go back into the ground, because remember, paper came from wood. So recycle paper, plastics, glass, metal, and so when you see different colors bins, right, if you see maybe oranges for glass, put the glass in, let it be recycled so we don't have to extract more glass from the ground. Take your cardboards and your papers, put it into the green bin for recycling it so that we don't have to cut down more trees. Take your plastic bottles and put it into probably a purple bin so that they can take that plastic and recycle it to make other kind of containers. Okay, so we're polluting less so that less plastic is on the earth and more can be used again. Replant. So every time you cut one tree, plant 20 more. Plant 20. For not one tree you cut down, you just plant one tree. For every one, you plant 20. So that you can try to replenish what has been lost. Renew ways of producing energy and making items. Be creative and inventive. For example, you can take your Coke cans and you can make a lantern, you can make a lampshade, you can make an ashtray, You can make even car bonnets and car parts with your little aluminium Coke cans. You can make, for example, little watering cans. Okay, you can actually build furniture, make even walls. You can take your tires and recycle them to actually fill up your potholes, so you don't need to dig more into the ground. So you can use your plastics to make plastic roads, so that we can use it without damaging the environment. And with that, learners, we say thank you for listening to this lesson. It's a very important lesson, and I hope you are educated to know that this is our planet and we need to save it. And the only way we can save it is by reducing your carbon footprint. And remember the 3 R's: reuse, recycle, and therefore reduce our waste. Thank you, learners.